Hello everyone. Welcome to the lecture on transactional and transformational leadership. As you would already know, I have already uploaded the handout for this lecture. Apart from that, you all are kindly requested to download this recorded lecture also and listen to it. And also you all can make notes on your handout wherever necessary. So this topic is about two modern leadership styles, which is transactional and transformational leadership. So this concept of transactional and transformational leadership came into discussion under the full range leadership model. So within this full range leadership model, they identify three styles of leadership that a leader could have. One is called transformational leadership and the other is called transactional leadership, and the third is called the laissez-faire leadership. We are not discussing in detail about the laissez-faire leadership style. Here we focus our serious attention about transformational and transactional leadership. So this diagram illustrates the dimensions of each of the leadership styles. But I am not going to explain to you about these dimensions of each of these leadership styles, as I will be elaborating them later during the lecture. So as you all know, I am Prabhashini Vijayavantha, Senior Lecturer attached to the Department of Human Resource Management, Faculty of Commerce and Management Studies, University of Kelaniya, Sri Lanka. So these are the areas that will be covered under this topic. So the first thing is I would explain to you what is transformational leadership. So I will provide you with a brief introduction to the concept of transformational leadership. And then we will identify what is the importance of having a transformational leader in an organization. Or basically, we will look at the consequences of transformational leadership. What are the outcomes that an organization would be able to achieve as a result of having a transformational leader in an organization? So that is what is being covered or discussed under consequences of transformational leadership. Next, we will look at the dimensions of transformational leadership, or what are the components from which transformational leadership is made. So I have mentioned you, or I have shown you the dimensions of transformational leadership in the previous slide in that small illustration. However, we will be discussing about each of these in detail later throughout the lecture. Then we will move on to look at the next concept, which is transactional leadership. And then we will look at the factors or dimensions within transactional leadership. Then after learning or after completing learning about both transformational leadership and transactional leadership, we will go on to compare the two concepts, that is transactional and transformational leadership. After the comparison, we will move on to look at the suitable situations or contexts for transformational leadership. So we will be looking at what are the situations where the transformational leadership concept is most appropriate. And thereafter, we'll move on to look at the pros and cons or advantages of transformational leadership. So this is the content that we are planning to cover during this lesson on transformational and transactional leadership. So let's begin our discussion with the topic transformational leadership. So let me give you all a brief introduction to the topic first. So the concept of transformational leadership was introduced by the person called Burns, James MacGregor Burns. He has introduced the concept of transformational leadership in 1978. And so that means he has introduced the concept through a research article or a research paper publication, which means that to produce a research paper or a research publication in 1978, he and his team of scholars have started to study about this concept before that, which means the concept of transformational leadership has been widely researched since 1970s. So from the early 1970s, the concept of transformational leadership has been widely researched. Thereafter, a scholar called Bass has concentrated on application of this concept to the practical context. So the next famous scholar about the concept of transformational leadership is Bass. He has produced several publications in this area. So I request you all to Google the publications done by Burns as well as Bass on transformational leadership. So Bass has concentrated or focused his attention on the application or applying of the concept to the practical context. How the concept of transformational leadership can be applied in practical situations to things like country situations or country leadership or national level leadership, organizational leadership, political leadership, etc. So they have identified that transformational leadership is a very highly successful leadership style among other styles of leadership. Transformational leadership is identified as a highly successful leadership style among other things because it has produced several positive consequences or positive results or positive outcomes. And this concept of transformational leadership pays more attention to followers rather than the leader's needs. So that is the speciality of this concept of leadership. It pays more attention to the followers or the subordinates rather than on the requirements or needs of the leader. So one of the major criticisms about other styles of leadership is that they focus on the needs and wants of the leader. But the focus of a leader should be towards the followers. So this theory also pays more attention towards the followers. So that is why this theory is identified as a special theory of leadership. So let me explain further about the concept of transformational leadership. So as you may have already heard, there is a leadership theory associated with the concept of transformational leadership. That is what we call the transformational leadership theory. So this theory basically explains about the concept of transformational leadership. So transformational leadership is a leadership process that changes and transforms people and the organizations. So leadership, as we all know, is not a one-time thing. Any leader will not take up the leadership positions for a particular period. They take up the leadership for a continuous period, and during that period they execute their leadership capacity. So then this leadership is a process. So transformational leadership is also a leadership process that changes and transforms people and the organizations. So, transformational leadership process changes or brings in a transformation within the people. That is, the followers or the subordinates or the employees. And when organizational leaders practice transformational leadership, it creates a transformation within the organizations as well. And this concept of transformational leadership is concerned with emotions, moral values, ethics, standards, and long-term goals. So, this concept of transformational leadership is concerned or focused about the emotions of both the leader and the followers. So, the leader directly talks or appeals to the emotions or feelings of the followers. He does so by introducing an emotional style of speech. And also, transformational leaders are people with a very high level of moral values. So we all know that values are very important for leaders. You may have studied about leadership values in detail with the other lecturers of this subject. So then it's very important for any leader to have a very high level of moral values. So when a leader is having very high moral values, they demonstrate behaviors such as they demonstrate very honest, very disciplined, very ethical, very professional, very polite behaviors. So then these values are observed by the subordinates or followers of the leader. So thereby the leaders with more high levels of moral values provide an exemplary demonstration of leadership. So as I mentioned with values, these kinds of leaders have a very high level of ethics. They demonstrate a very high level of ethics, and at the same time they expect their followers to be ethical as well. And these leaders handle situations, organizations, countries or businesses in a very ethical manner. So there is no need to discuss about responsible or ethical leadership with transformational leaders, because they are already ethical, or it is obvious that they are ethical, and they create a very ethical work environment or climate. So it is very easy for the followers with high moral values to work comfortably in such organizations. And transformational leaders focus on performance standards. So with as you all know, as with normal performance evaluations, in discussion with the subordinates or followers, transformational leaders establish standards of performance or performance standards, and then they strongly adhere to those standards. And also they maintain those performance standards through their behaviors. So that is why I said transformational leaders automatically become exemplary leaders, where they demonstrate exemplary behavior and thereby set the standards for the followers also to follow. And transformational leaders establish long-term goals for their organizations or units, and then they work on realizing those goals. Transformational leadership includes thinking about followers as well, as I mentioned previously. So, transformational leadership includes assessing or evaluating about the followers. These followers can be the people of a country, the followers of a political party, the employees of an organization, members of a sports team, whoever. So, the leader assesses the motives or objectives of the followers. And then, if they are good objectives, the leader supports the achievement of those objectives. And also, leaders support to satisfy the needs of these followers. The leader supports to satisfy the needs of these followers. So, thereby the leader is able to make the followers happy. And also, leaders treat the followers as full human beings. This is a very important thing. Transformational leaders treat their subordinates or followers as full human beings. What do you mean by full human beings? Full human beings means that the leader treats the subordinates in the same way as himself, as another person, not a person of a lower level, but the person of the same level as the leader. And transformational leaders establish oneself as a role model by gaining the trust and confidence of followers. So, transformational leaders, as I mentioned previously, establishes oneself or themselves as a role model or an exemplary character. So, who is a role model? A role model is a person whom we look up to, whom we can look and get examples, get advice and develop ourselves also according to him or her. So, transformational leaders act as role models. How? By gaining the trust and confidence of the followers. It's very important to gain the trust of the followers. It is very rare, as you may have seen, that the employees trust their leaders or bosses. But if you can gain the trust or the confidence of the followers, then whatever the leader says, the followers are ready to do. So, gaining that trust and confidence of the followers is not easy for a leader. Most of the leaders are not trusted leaders. So, that is why most of the subordinates do not give their 100% commitment to the tasks and objectives of the organization and the leader, because they assume or they understand that the leaders have a hidden agenda behind all what they do. So that reduces the level of trust and confidence of the followers. So therefore, the leader should be able to gain the trust and confidence of the followers. We call it like the subordinates say, "Ape nayakayawa apita sure," that kind of a thing. So gaining that trust and confidence is very hard, but once gained, it is really advantageous for the leader. So far, I had been talking about the goodness of transformational leadership. So then, being a really good concept of leadership or a style of leadership, or a leadership approach, what are the results that it is producing, or what are its consequences? So here I have just listed out a few of the major consequences. As I have mentioned before, the concept of transformational leadership is an area that is being widely researched in organizational behavior, organizational management, and HRM related research studies. So what are the consequences of transformational leadership? Transformational leadership produces a lot of positive outcomes. This diagram also shows one such set of positive outcomes. So transformational leadership leads to leaders' active empathetic listening, which in turn leads to employee well-being. Furthermore, transformational leadership creates a perceived psychological safety climate, and also it encourages innovative work behavior. So all these things indicate that transformational leadership produces very positive consequences or outcomes to an organization or a country. So let's look at the consequences. The first thing, increased employee organizational commitment. So when there is a transformational leader, it has been found through research that it leads to increased employee organizational commitment. So when the leader or the boss or the supervisor demonstrates transformational leadership, the followers or subordinates will demonstrate more commitment towards the organization. So if there is a researcher who is further interested about this area of organizational commitment, what they can do is they can elaborate further and see what dimension out of the three main dimensions of organizational commitment that is increased more by transformational leadership. So what are the dimensions of organizational commitment? Effective, normative, and continuance commitment. Next, transformational leadership reduces or lowers the job stress. So when there is a transformational leader, what would such a leader do? While they execute their leadership, it does not increase the level of job stress of the subordinates. Instead, they contribute to reduce that. And also, transformational leaders produce higher levels of job satisfaction for the followers. So, transformational leadership leads to higher levels of job satisfaction. And also, when there is a transformational leader, automatically the subordinates become satisfied with the leader. And also, it leads to increased performance among the subordinates or individual employees, which in turn leads to increased unit or team or departmental performance, and ultimately to increased organizational performance. So all these indicates that transformational leadership produces a wide array of positive consequences for organizations. So you all are kindly requested to search and look for other consequences of transformational leadership. You can do that by searching the internet or Google and finding out research articles. As identified previously, we are going to discuss further about the consequences of transformational leadership. So, in the previous slide, we mainly focused on the consequences of transformational leadership on the organizations as a whole. But here in this slide, I would like to highlight the consequences of transformational leadership on followers. So, the consequences of transformational leadership directly fall onto the followers. And then, based on the acts of followers, the organizational consequences occur. So, let's look at the consequences of transformational leadership on followers. Impact on different aspects of followers. So, transformational leadership is expected to create a huge impact on different aspects of followers. So, one of the tasks that you could do is, as I mentioned previously, go through the Google, go through the research articles and find out what are these different impacts. What are the different aspects on which the transformational leadership has an impact? So, for an example, transformational leadership of the leader will have a direct positive impact on the performance of the subordinates or employees or followers. Similarly, it has been found out that transformational leadership encourages the creativity among followers. And next, it enhances the personal values and self-concept of the followers. Transformational leadership enhances or increases the personal values and self-concept of the followers. It enhances or increases the personal values like honesty, integrity, discipline, self-motivation, commitment, etc. among the followers, as the followers look at the leader as an exemplary character or a role model. And because of this, the self-concept of the followers also will enhance. That is, each and every individual employee will try to develop a very unique self-identity about themselves. Transformational leadership also fosters autonomy through challenging work, which lead to followers' growth, achievement of extraordinary outcomes, and development in the capacity of leaders. Transformational leadership fosters or encourages autonomy or freedom of the followers. How? By providing them challenging work. So, transformational leadership or transformational leaders, apart from assigning the routine work to their subordinate employees, also assigns them new challenging work opportunities and assignments. And also they give the necessary autonomy or freedom to the subordinate employees. And then the subordinates with the autonomy or the freedom will embrace those challenging work assignments and do it by themselves. Sometimes they could be successful, sometimes they could be fail. So, whichever happens, it leads to the growth of the followers or the subordinate employees. So, one of the most important outcomes of transformational leaders is that it contributes to the growth of the followers or the subordinate employees. And also, transformational leadership contributes to the achievement of extraordinary outcomes. Transformational leaders contribute to achieve extraordinary performance outcomes and thereby develop the capacity of the employees. It expands the capacity of the lead employees so that they can develop in the capacity of leaders in the future. So that's why we always say transformational leadership contributes to growth of the followers as well as the development of followers in the capacity of leaders. Do you understand what this is? This means transformational leaders encourage and develop their followers or subordinates so that they can become leaders in the future. So transformational leadership is mainly about developing future leaders or strengthening the bench of leaders in the organizations. Or we call it the expanding of the leadership pipeline in organizations. I will further discuss about this development of the leadership pipeline in the topic follower leadership development. And also transformational leaders motivate followers to do more than they are originally expected to do. So transformational leaders are capable of motivating followers. They can easily motivate their subordinates or employees. So with that motivation, the subordinates will do more than they are originally expected to do. So which means transformational leaders assign stretch goals to their subordinates and get them to do more or achieve more than they were originally expected to do through the normal performance evaluation scheme. So here also we continue our discussion about the consequences of transformational leadership on followers. So transformational leaders encourage followers to look beyond their own self-interest for the good of the group or the organization. So, this is a very important consequence of transformational leadership. Transformational leadership or transformational leaders encourage or motivate their subordinates, employees, or followers to look beyond their own self-interests. That is the self-interests of the followers. So that means the leader encourages the followers to demonstrate selfless commitment. The leader encourages the subordinates or followers to be less selfish or not only focus on their career development and their promotions, but also encourage them for the good of the group or the organization. So transformational leaders encourage followers to look beyond their own self-interest for the good of the group or the team or the whole organization. So the leader encourages the followers to selflessly commit for the benefit of the organization. And by doing so, the transformational leaders become moral agents. That is, transformational leaders become the agents who demonstrate good moral behaviors to their subordinates. Leaders and followers raise one another to a higher level without competition. In transformational leadership, the leaders support the followers and simultaneously the followers also support the leader. So leaders and followers jointly raise or uplift one another or each other where to a higher level or to an elevated position without having any competition with the subordinates. This is very important because in some instances, the leaders do not encourage the development of their subordinates or followers because they think that the subordinates will create competition to them, which is a risk or a threat for the leaders. But transformational leaders never consider their subordinates as competitors or threats. Instead, they focus on development of each other so that both parties could mutually upgrade their level in terms of knowledge, skills, attitudes, experience, competencies, and career development. Next, let's look at the dimensions of transformational leadership. So, what are the dimensions of transformational leadership? When scholars or researchers or academics wanted to do research about the construct of transformational leadership, they developed scales or measures to evaluate the transformational leadership of a person. So, to develop the scale, they wanted to identify how to find out whether a person is a transformational leader. There, they identified 4 characteristics as that of transformational leaders. 1. Idealized influence. 2. Inspirational motivation. So, I will explain those two first and move on to the next 2 dimensions. So, what is idealized influence? That is, this dimension talks about the level or amount of influence created by the leader to the followers. Leader acts as a strong role model for the followers with a high standard of moral and ethical conduct. So the leader acts or behaves or executes his or her leadership as a very strong role model. As we mentioned, a transformational leader is always a strong role model for the followers. So the leader is a very exemplary character for the followers to look up to with a very high standard or high level of moral and ethical conduct. So which means now we have discussed leadership ethics or ethical leadership or responsible leadership in a previous lecture. So we all know what are the high standards or moralities or ethics for a leader. So a transformational leader has a high standard of moral and ethical conduct. Followers identify with these leaders and want very much to imitate them or follow the vision. So the followers, subordinates or employees of transformational leaders identify themselves with these leaders, which means the followers, employees or subordinates are very keen or very interested or very proud to say that they are subordinates of this person, or their boss is this person, or they are followers of this particular leader, because they feel it is an honor to be a follower of this leader. And they want very much to imitate or copy the leader. So the followers also try to adopt the practices of the leader and also follow the vision of the leader. And thereby they also help or support or contribute the leader to realize his or her vision. Next is inspirational motivation. So then the leader motivates the followers through inspiration. The leader communicates very high expectations to their followers or subordinates. The transformational leaders have very good communication skills. They have very good communication methods. They follow very good communication methods. And leaders always communicate very high expectations to their followers or subordinates. That is what I have mentioned previously, that transformational leaders create stretch goals to their followers. And thereafter, the leader does not simply wait by creating high expectations. They inspire or encourage or motivate the followers. How? Through motivation. To do what? To become committed to and be a part of the shared vision of the organization or the leader. So thereby the followers or the subordinates also would be willingly engaged in or willingly committed to perform the duties required to realize the vision of the leader or the organization. So then in that case, achieving high performance for the team or the unit or the company is not a problem for a transformational leader. Next, we'll look at the other two dimensions of transformational leadership. So, the third dimension of transformational leadership is intellectual stimulation. So, what is intellectual stimulation? The transformational leader stimulates the followers to be creative and innovative in dealing with organizational issues and to challenge their own beliefs and values as well as those of the leader. So in simple, the transformational leader encourages the followers or the subordinates of the employees to use their brains during work, and thereby he expands the thinking capacity of these employees. So the transformational leader stimulates, motivates or encourages the followers to be creative. So that is why it has been identified that creativity and innovative work behavior are two positive consequences of transformational leadership. So leader encourages the subordinates to be creative in doing their work. And so with creativity and innovation, lot of new things can be introduced to the organization and the work setting. So creative and innovative in dealing with organizational issues. So usually every day when you work in an organization, you face or deal with the issues. So when you face or deal with the issues, it is important that the leaders and the followers jointly find solutions or new ways of doing work to come out of those issues. So in this regard, the leader encourages the followers themselves to come up with creative and innovative solutions and proposals, and also to challenge their own beliefs and values. So sometimes the employees have some certain traditional old beliefs, And the leaders of this type encourages the subordinates to challenge or rethink about their own negative and harmful beliefs and come out of those silos and think in a new way. And so thereby both the leader and the subordinates or followers get into creativity and innovative work behaviors and also challenge their own beliefs and values. The next or the final or the fourth dimension of transformational leadership is individualized consideration. So as the term implies, transformational leaders have an individual focus or a consideration or an attention about each and every employee. This is very important because when a person feels that he is being considered or the leader pays attention to him or her, that would be very important for the subordinate because generally human beings have an attention-seeking behavior. So a leader provides a supportive climate in which they listen carefully to the individual needs of the followers. So transformational leaders provides a very supportive work climate in the organization. So this creation of this supportive climate ensures that when the subordinates or employees or followers are doing their work or fulfilling their work-related responsibilities, there is always support available for them, help available for them. That means the employees are not alone. They are always helped, backed, supported and encouraged by the leader. So this feeling gives a lot of confidence to the employee and encourages him to do his work better. It gives motivation and that leads to increased organizational performance, increased organizational commitment and increased employee engagement. So how does these kinds of leaders create this supportive climate? Mainly they do it by listening carefully to the individual needs of the followers. So transformational leaders do not neglect any employee or any follower. We all know that people always seek attention. They have an attention-seeking behavior. So you may have seen or heard or you may have seen on social media that most people get into stress, burnout, depression and suicide because they feel they are being ignored or neglected. But when a person is being well heard, then it does not happen because then they know that there is somebody to always listen to them. So transformational leaders play that role by listening very carefully to the followers. So then the employees know when they have a problem, when they need advice, everything, there is somebody that they can go and look up to and that this person would not let down them but listen to them very carefully and very thoroughly. So listening carefully means the leader is listening without focusing his or her attention on other things, and also at the same time the leader is listening to understand and not to respond. So thereby the needs and wants of the individual followers would be fulfilled, and this gives a great satisfaction for the employees. Further, transformational leaders fulfill this by providing coaching, mentoring, encouragement and growth opportunities to the subordinates. So transformational leaders provide coaching to their employees and also mentoring to their employees. So you may know that there is a relationship between a mentor and a mentee. So companies like Unilever Sri Lanka, whenever they recruit the new employees, especially the management trainees, they create mentors or they assign mentors for each and every new employee so that they can get the support of the mentors. And also the transformational leaders provide encouragement and opportunities for these employees to grow by improving opportunities for their career to develop and get promotions with new challenges, projects, exposure and experiences. With the discussion about the dimensions of transformational leadership, I have completed giving you all a brief introduction about the concept of transformational leadership. So if you go back to the title slide of this presentation, you would notice that this lecture is about two leadership styles. One is transformational leadership, and we have completed the discussion about that. The next is about transactional leadership. So what is transactional leadership? As the name implies, a transactional leadership is where the leader performs the leadership in the form of a transaction. So which means it's a transaction between the leader and the followers. So let's see how we can elaborate that explanation further. A transactional leader provides resources and rewards in exchange for motivation, productivity, effective goal or task accomplishments. So what is a transaction? In Sinhala, what is a transaction? Ganudenu. So a Ganudenu involves two parts. Ganu from one side and Denu from the other side. So this leadership is also something like that. So leader provides. Denu. What? Resources and rewards. The leader provides resources to whom? To the employees. So the leader provides the resources such as raw materials, capital equipment, and also leader makes the investments in the business in discussion with the entrepreneur or the shareholders, and the leader provides the training, the knowledge, facilities like transport, etc. and also rewards. So we all know that when you work for an organization, you get rewarded. So then the leader provides the employees with rewards based on the performance of employees. So you all have studied that rewards management or compensation management or remuneration management is a key HRM function, and it's mainly executed jointly by the HR department and the line manager. So in addition to the basic salary provided to each and every employee in the company, you know that the compensation package of an employee comprises of three main components. The first thing is the base pay or the basic salary, which is fixed to the position or the job. So at the time of performing the job analysis itself, after preparing the job description, we determine the base pay or the basic salary for a particular job based on the job evaluation results. And then in addition to that, based on the performance of the individual employees, we provide variable pay or variable compensation. Things like bonuses, etc. So all these, and also there are other benefits and perquisites like hotel accommodation, transport, fuel, telephone, etc. So all these rewards are provided by the leader, provided by the recommendation of the boss. So then the leader provides these resources and the rewards. The resources that are provided by the company or the organization or the leader are explained in detail in the job demands resource theory. So you are kindly requested to Google and find out the job demands resource theory and find out what are the resources provided by organizations to employees. So leader provides resources and rewards to the followers or employees or subordinates in exchange. So basically there is an exchange principle happening here. So basically this transactional leadership concept and the theory is based on the social exchange theory. So in exchange for what? Motivation. So if the employees work in a motivated manner, if they show or demonstrate motivation, and if they achieve high levels of productivity and effective goal or task accomplishments or performance, then the leader will provide these resources. So as I mentioned just now, this concept or this leadership style is based on the concept of exchange. So this is further elaborated in detail in the theory called social exchange theory by Blau. So you are kindly requested to search the internet and find the theory and read about it. Another term for this concept of exchange is reciprocity. So there is a reciprocity between the leader and the group members. As we discussed the dimensions of transformational leadership previously, now I am going to discuss the dimensions of transactional leadership. They are identified here as transactional leadership factors. So these are the dimensions through which the variable of transactional leadership is formed. So the first dimension or factor of transformational leadership is contingent rewards. So the rewards are the things that are provided by the leader to the employees or the subordinates or the followers in return for their performance. So these rewards are contingent or always changing, depends on the performance of the employees. So we could identify these as performance-based rewards. So the contingent rewards explains the exchange process between leaders and followers in which effort by followers is exchanged for specified rewards. So as we mentioned or discussed earlier, the transactional leadership process is totally or purely based on the process of social exchange and or the norm of reciprocity. So the contingent rewards indicates the exchange process between the leaders and the followers in which the efforts to perform their duties by the followers is exchanged for specified rewards given to the followers by the leader. So these specified rewards come in the form of increments to the basic salary or bonuses and other forms of variable compensation or perquisites or benefits. So these kinds of financial rewards as well as non-financial rewards such as recognition, appreciation, etc. will be provided to the followers or the employees. The second factor within transactional leadership is management by exception. So what is management by exception? Leadership that involves corrective criticism, negative feedback, and negative reinforcement. So, management by exception refers to the different types of feedback provided by the leaders to the subordinates. So, here leadership involves corrective criticism. That means the leader will be not hesitant or reluctant to criticize the subordinates or the followers or the employees based on their incorrect actions. So if there is any mistake or if anything incorrect is done by the followers, the leader would not hesitate to criticize them with the objective of correcting them. And also there would be instances where the leader would be providing negative feedback to the followers or the subordinates or the employee. In this case, the leader may be harsh as well. So the leader may be providing feedback based on the performance of the employees, and sometimes even if it is negative feedback, criticisms or scolding, the leader would not hesitate to do that. And also leader would be practicing negative reinforcement if there is a need. So what is reinforcement? Reinforcement refers to repeating something again and again. So if there is a mistake or something wrong done by an employee, the leader would repeatedly highlight and emphasize about that wrong act, so that the employee would hear it over and over again and then decide, okay, this is a shame for me and I should not do it again. So this management by exception can take two forms. One is the active form and the other or the second one is the passive form. So what do you mean by the active form? Under the active form of management by exception, the leader watches the follower very closely to identify mistakes or rule violations. So under this active form of management by exception, the leader or the boss or the supervisor watches carefully the followers or closely watches the followers. That is called close monitoring or close supervision. He is doing it with the purpose of identifying the mistakes made by the employee or any rule violations made by the employee. So then, because the leader is closely watching or monitoring, he would be able to identify the mistakes or rule violations before things go wrong. And the second is passive management by exception. So what is passive management by exception? Intervening only after standards have not been met or problems have arisen. Under this form, the followers or the subordinates have some form of autonomy or freedom with the leader. Why? Because the leader interferes or intervenes to the work only after standards have not been met. So until such time, the followers are given the complete freedom to do their work at their own pace and according to their own way. So there is no close monitoring or close supervision. After the performance has been completed, the leader will evaluate the performance to see whether the performance meets the standards, and thereafter intervenes if the performance standards that were agreed at the beginning have not been met, which means there is a deviation between the expected performance and the actual performance. And in that regard, the problems have arisen. But the unfortunate situation here is sometimes once the problems have arisen, the leader will use punishments to the employees. And sometimes without using punishments, the leader may take corrective action. That is something highly acceptable, taking corrective action. As we have already now completed the discussion about transformational leadership and transactional leadership separately, now I am going to just compare the two styles of leadership in a very basic level. Apart from this comparison, you are kindly requested to try to answer this question. What is the difference between transformational and transactional leadership? So that you would be able to compare the two leadership styles, and that understanding would be really helpful for you at the exam. So let's see two opposite styles of leadership which can be practiced by the same leader at different occasions. So, the speciality of these two styles of leadership are that there are leaders who can be identified as transformational leaders, but at the same time, they can practice transactional leadership as well. When you identify these two styles of leadership, they are two opposite styles of leadership. They are two polar opposite styles of leadership. But the speciality is they can be practiced by the same leader irrespective of the fact that they are two opposite styles of leadership but at different occasions. So sometimes some people identify that these are not two separate or opposite styles of leadership but separate dimensions within one leader. Separate dimensions rather than separate styles of leadership. Because if they are two separate styles of leadership, they cannot be practiced by the same leader even at different occasions. So therefore, some scholars do not agree with the viewpoint that transformational leadership and transactional leadership are two opposite or separate styles of leadership. Instead, they are identified as separate dimensions. As one leader can be both a transactional leader as well as a transformational leader at two different occasions. And three different styles of leadership which are closely associated with transformational leadership are charismatic leadership, inspirational leadership, and visionary leadership. So though there are slight differences between each of these, there is a lot of similarities among them along with transformational leadership. But there are scholars who have largely differentiated between charismatic and transformational leadership. If you refer to the Yuckel's book on leadership, which is the recommended textbook for this subject, you would be able to find a chapter where Yuckel separately talks about charismatic leadership and transformational leadership. So, one of the homework activities that you can do is to study the differences between transformational leadership, charismatic leadership, inspirational leadership, and visionary leadership. So next, let me present a comparison of the dimensions of transformational and transactional leadership. So this slide is a summary of the gist of the two styles of leadership. So the first one is transformational leadership. So as we discussed previously, the transformational leadership comprises of four factors or four dimensions. The first one is idealized influence charisma. The second one is inspirational motivation. The third is intellectual stimulation. And the final is individualized consideration. So I am not going to elaborate or explain about these factors in detail again because I have already done so. So what is transformational leadership in summary? It is the process of engaging to create a connection that increases motivation and morality in both the leader and the follower. So transformational leadership is a leadership process of engaging the leader and the followers together to create a connection or a linkage that increases the level of motivation as well as the morality in both the leader and the followers or the subordinates. In contrast, transactional leadership comprises of three factors or three dimensions. The first one is contingent rewards. The second one is management by exception. So one may say transactional leadership comprises of only two factors. But again there are two forms within management by exception as the active form and the passive form. So together, all in all, one could say there are three factors. So if you explain transactional leadership in summary, it focuses on exchanges between leaders and followers. So as I mentioned previously, transactional leadership is based on the principle of exchange. So it focuses on exchanges between leaders and followers. As we have completed discussing about transformational leadership separately and transactional leadership separately and the comparison between the two, next let's look at suitable situations for transformational leadership. So here we are going to look at the suitable practical or real-life situations for practicing transformational leadership. So, it has been found out through research studies that transformational leadership is effective in a variety of settings. Transformational leadership is found out to be very effective or very productive in a variety of settings or a wide array of situations. So let's see some of them. Most preferred in environments of great transformational changes with absence of stability and greater insecurity. So transformational leadership is most preferred or most liked in organizational environments with great or huge transformational changes or huge changes taking place in organizations, which creates a paradigm shift in the direction in which the organization moves. So accordingly, it is said that transformational leadership is very much appropriate for multinational corporations because there is always an absence of stability. So the business environment or the organizational environment is not stable and there is always greater insecurity. So though we initially said that this style of leadership is appropriate for organizations operating internationally, it can also be said that this style of leadership is now appropriate for any organization. Why? Because any type of organization now experiences great transformational changes with a lack of stability and a higher level of insecurity. Transformational leadership is not always participative, can be both directive and participative depending on the demands of the situation. So, though transformational leadership is identified to have a very positive outcomes, it is not always participative, which means it does not always demand or request the participation of the subordinates in the decision making. Sometimes transformational leaders can be directive and on the other occasions they can be participative depending on the demands of the situation that they are facing. So it is flexible. Next, let's look at the pros and cons of transformational leadership. So what are pros and cons? Pros refer to the advantages or rather the positive side of the concept of transformational leadership, whereas cons refer to the disadvantages or the negative side of transformational leadership. So what are pros? What are the pros of transformational leadership? First thing, it has a very sensitive appeal. So we all know that the transformational leaders are identified as people who has lot of care about the followers. So it has a very sensitive appeal towards the followers. So it is consistent or is in line with the society's popular notion or idea of what leadership means. What is leadership? A leader should be a person who is very caring and who is looking after his followers, subordinates or employees like a father. So generally the society expects a fatherly role from a leader. So this kind of sensitive appealing can be observed to a certain degree in transformational leadership, and therefore everybody likes or prefers to have transformational leaders. Transformational leadership treats leadership as a process that occurs between followers and leaders. So some people believe that some people believe that leadership is something to do with leaders themselves only. But actually, transformational leadership goes beyond that and treats or understands or identifies leadership as a process that not occurs only with the leader but between the followers and the leaders. So this concept of leadership places a strong emphasis on the leader, and in the same way it emphasizes on the followers. Transformational leadership provides or gives a very broader view of leadership to the people who are studying or observing that, and that it supplements other leadership models. And transformational leadership places or keeps a strong emphasis on the needs, values and morals of the followers. So transformational leadership places or puts a strong emphasis on the needs of the followers. So the leader tries always to understand what are the needs of the followers and cater to them, and tries to identify the values of the followers and cater to them. I tries to identify and share good morals with the followers. And also, we all know that transformational leadership is a theory. So there is real world evidence that it is supported in the real world. It works. Actually, as indicated in the theory, when a person performs or practices transformational leadership, you can obtain the outcomes expected and indicated in the theory. Next, like any other thing, how much ever good the transformational leadership concept or the theory is, there are shortcomings or cons or weaknesses as well. So what are the cons or weaknesses of transformational leadership? It lacks clarity. There are problems with the clarity of the theory and the concept of transformational leadership. It lacks clarity. There is less clarity. The theory is not very clear. So it is difficult to define the parameters or the limits of the theory. So sometimes the people who are trying to practice this and the people who are trying to study and research about this are getting confused. And though there is a well accepted scale developed to measure transformational leadership of a person, still it is believed that it is difficult or hard to measure transformational leadership, because it is difficult to differentiate between the 4 dimensions of transformational leadership. A person who is studying or learning about transformational leadership like y'all may find that though I have explained there are 4 separate dimensions of transformational leadership, they are all similar and they are all the same thing. So as a result, it would be difficult or hard to distinct or separate each other. And sometimes some people argue that transformational leadership is not a style of leadership, but it is a personality trait of the people. So it can be seen as a personality trait or a personal disposition or character or a part of the personality of people. And transformational leadership has the potential to be abused, because once a transformational leader executes actual transformational leadership, people get attracted to him. So once people get attracted to him and once people embrace him and welcome him, he would get misguided and he would try to go in the wrong direction in the latter stages. Transformational leadership only works in situations that require change. So as mentioned in the previous slide, transformational leadership is ideal or best suited in situations with huge transformations or where there are changes required. So it only works in situations or instances that require or need change. So it may not work in an organization that is not open for a transformation. So sometimes when there is a person, a transformational leader who is trying to execute transformational leadership in an organization which is not open or ready for a transformation or a change of the way things were done in that organization, like most of the government sector organizations in Sri Lanka, it may not work in such organizations, and transformational leadership may be or could be observed as a failure. So with that, I conclude the session on transformational and transactional leadership. So in here, I would summarize the two concepts. So this transformational leadership comprises of 4 dimensions or 4 factors. The combination of these 4 factors creates transformational leadership. So these are the 4 dimensions of transformational leadership: idealized influence, inspirational motivation, intellectual stimulation, and individualized consideration. Then we have transactional leadership. It comprises of 2 main dimensions. The first one is contingent rewards, and the second one is management by exception, which again takes 2 forms as the active form and the passive form. So transactional leadership, if executed properly, will produce the expected outcomes. But if you want to perform beyond expectations or perform beyond the expected performance standards, then you need the practice of transformational leadership. So with that, I conclude the session on transactional and transformational leadership. So if you all have any questions, you all can email me or just post them on the LMS so that I can clarify them later. So thank you very much for downloading this lecture and listening to it. Once again, you all are kindly requested to download the handout and print it, and also download this video lecture and listen to it repeatedly. And when you are listening to the lecture, if there is anything important, you all can make notes on your handout. So thank you so much once again, and stay safe.